Good morning. I am Ward 4 Councilmember Janice Lewis-George, the Chair of the Committees on Facilities and Family Services. Today is April 12th, 2023, and we are holding this hearing using the Zoom online platform. The time is 9:40 a.m. Today we'll be receiving government testimony from the Office of the Ombudsman for Children, OFC, and the Child and Family Services Agency, better known as CFSA. If you would like to submit written testimony for the record, please do so by April 20th. You can email the committee at facilities@dccouncil.gov. Before I discuss the agencies, I would like to provide some logistical announcement for today's hearing. In addition to Zoom, this hearing is being broadcast live on my website at janiceward4.com/live. Since we have government witnesses today, council members will have up to 10 minutes to ask questions of each panel. We will hear first from the acting ombudsman person, Patrina Jones-Jess, following by CFSA Director Robert L. Matthews. I'd like to thank them, their staff, and AFOs for being here today. I'm going to check to see if I have any colleagues. I do not have any colleagues who are here. So Director, can you, and anybody else who's going to testify, if you could raise your right hand before we begin any hearing, we swear in our government witnesses. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give to the Committee on Facilities and Family Services is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Acting Ombudsperson, you may begin your testimony.
Thank you so much. And good morning, Chairperson Lewis-George and members of the committee. My name is Patrina Jones-Jess, and I'm currently serving as the Acting Ombudsperson for the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children, also referred to as the Office for the OFC. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to present and discuss the fiscal year 2023 and fiscal year 2024 budget for this new office, as well as provide an update on our efforts to stand up the office and implement OFC's legislation. I also want to take a moment to express gratitude for the work completed by the former Ombudsperson, Ms. Shalonda Coffin, which has established an infrastructure that will support the development of the office and our ongoing engagement of CFSA and outreach to the community. The enabling legislation for the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children passed in 2020 and was later amended and made effective as DC Law 23-270 on April 5th, 2021. It legislatively established the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children as an independent, impartial agency responsible to the Council for helping to improve outcomes for CFSA children by holding CFSA and other child and family serving agencies accountable for their responsibilities under the law. My employment with the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children began on December 5th, 2022 as the Chief Deputy Ombudsperson, and I've been serving as the Acting Ombudsperson since March 14th, 2023. As the Acting Ombudsperson, the office has continued to carry out the duties established by the first Ombudsperson for Children in the district to stand up the office and build relationships with CFSA staff and community agencies to identify trends in the district's child welfare system. In February of this year, the Ombudsperson and I came together to identify core areas of focus that will require funding to carry out the effort to improve outcomes for children and families going forward. These areas included identifying and paying for office space, continuing with the need for upgrades to our website, database, and online complaint form, resources for community outreach, and hiring a qualified and committed staff. I am pleased to announce that we have received the funding to continue with these efforts, which are critical to setting up the new office. For fiscal year 2023, the OFC's approved budget is $935,000, and for fiscal year 2024, the proposed budget is $938,000. And so I would like to spend the next few minutes of my time with an overview of our proposed spending plan in key areas. So beginning with the office space occupancy, for fiscal year 2023, the office has included a prorated budget in its spending plan to pay the rental expense of a new office space for the OFC. This office space is located at 955 LaFont Plaza, and the occupancy began on March 1st, 2023, per the occupancy agreement. However, the agency has not had full access to the space until April 4th of this year. The annual rent for the office new space is prorated at $47,441 for the current fiscal year. And the annual cost of rent for the office space is included in the spending plan for fiscal year 2024 at $97,254.13. In regards to employee staffing, the classification requests were developed by the Ombudsperson during the fiscal year 2023 for 4 of the 5 approved positions for the office. The overall approved budget for staff salaries and benefits is $653,000 for fiscal year 2023. We are requesting $725,816.16 for salaries and benefits in fiscal year 2024. 2 of the 4 positions have gone through the entire hiring process from classification to selection. Those positions are the Chief Deputy Ombudsperson with an onboarding date of December 5th, 2022, and the Deputy CFSA Ombudsperson who started on February 27th, 2023. Classification requests for the remaining 2 positions, the Ombuds Analysts, have been completed and the positions are currently posted to recruit potential candidates. Our goal is to fill the Ombuds Analyst positions by May 2023. On February 6, 2023, the office launched the website database and online complaint form developed in partnership with the district's Office of the Chief Technology Officer. We continue to work with Octo to ensure that all agreed upon deliverables have been completed and to identify additional improvements. In March 2023, members of the Octo team and the OFC attended a demonstration of the system used by the Virginia Office of the Child's Ombudsman. And from this demonstration, we were able to identify other features and functions that would be helpful to the running of the Ombuds office, such as data reporting, task lists, and case tracking functions. It's our goal to ensure that all data received by the office is stored securely within the existing system to maintain confidentiality. In regards to community outreach, it is our goal to continue engaging and communicating with agencies about the work of the office. This ongoing work includes intensive outreach with the community, including families, children, and youth served directly by CFSA. We are also excited about engaging child welfare advocates and other agencies that serve children that are served by CFSA. In our spending plan, we have included budget line items to support our efforts to engage with the community, including funds to secure community space and materials if needed, and other incentives for family participation in meetings. So in conclusion, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to discuss our budget and spending plan for the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children. We believe our budget will allow us to address the current needs of the office while creating a foundation for further growth in the future. It also allows for the flexibility needed for funding at this early stage with a new agency as we continue to identify what the office will need to meet its goals. We are committed to moving forward with the office's core beliefs, focused on improving outcomes for children and families in the district by assessing the child welfare system and identifying areas for growth and improvement. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for your thorough testimony and for all the ways in which you have stepped up during this transition and time period and working with the district and serving the district in that regard. And thank you for your testimony, which included a lot of items that we wanted to go over. And so I'll only ask you a few questions, just follow-up wise. I want to start with the office space. So you all you've had access since the April 4th is what I understand from your testimony.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
And what is the anticipated, so what's your lease and what's the anticipated yearly lease cost?
The yearly lease cost is $97,254.13.
Okay. And are you on a year-to-year lease?
Our lease concludes in 2026, September 2026.
Okay. And sort of how much how many individuals do you have in your office that you need to be able to fit into office space right now?
So we're approved for 5 positions. So that includes the Ombudsperson, the Chief Deputy Ombudsperson, the Deputy CFSA Ombudsperson, and 2 Ombuds Analysts.
Okay.
So that's where we are for 2023 is the 5 positions. We expect to have those 2 Ombuds Analyst positions filled by May. So we would have 4 positions definitely filled.
Okay. And as far as DGS goes, did you have an opportunity to tour any of the DC government buildings with DGS prior to? I know most people are like in co-located government spaces with other government agencies. So I just wanted to know what that process, and as chair of facilities, DGS is also under my oversight. And so just wanted to know what your experience was like with DGS, and did they tour you any DGS office buildings, and sort of what was the process of them sort of you all needing to go outside of the DGS portfolio for office space?
So the only office tour that I attended was of LaFont Plaza. There was discussion about office space in the building we're in now, which is the Marion Barry building. However, there were other events that came up and they were not able to make that happen for us, having office space in this building.
Okay.
So they showed us the LaFont Plaza space, and it definitely suits our needs in terms of location. There's a metro right adjacent to the building, a metro stop or a metro station, and there's space for growth as the team grows. So because it was suitable, there's conference rooms and other amenities, we went forward with LaFont Plaza.
Okay. And when you say the Marion Barry building, is that 441?
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, Councilman.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure because there's the other. Okay. And so right now they didn't have any space for you all at the 441 location.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And then did DGS and they didn't take you on any other tours of any other DGS buildings?
No, I was not involved in any other tours.
Okay. All right. I'll follow up with DGS. I think the lease cost is kind of high. I don't know why they can't find space. They're also DGS is getting their own brand new state-of-the-art building very soon, I think at the end of June, or I think it's supposed to be in the end of June. So I just was interested as to what that process was and why they didn't have space to offer you as a result of that, in trying to keep costs down, because the lease cost is high. But I can follow up with DGS in that regard. I want to talk about the website. The OFC currently has a website for filing a complaint. Just want to ask you, does the current version meet the needs of the agency? And if not, what needs to be added or changed?
So as an initial start, it does meet the needs of the agency. So the community can go to our website, they can learn information about us, our values, and they can also file a complaint there. So there's a complaint form that's linked to the website. So in terms of function, it meets a minimal need. There are additional functions that we'd like to add to the database, which captures any submitted complaint that comes through the complaint form process. And we believe that will help us have a better understanding of our operations in terms of, we want to learn more about or keep track of how many investigations are we working on at one time, how many contacts are being made to the office, what are the source of the complaints? Are they foster parents or are they other members of the community? And so we've been able to see, I mentioned the Virginia database and their system, and they're able to capture so much information about
Right.
the operations of their office. So we want to try to develop something very similar, but in terms of a foundation, I mean, we have a good start. We can move forward from here.
Okay. And so you all, you've been receiving thus far in usage of the website, you've been able to receive complaints through the website and process those pretty seamlessly.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And what is the budget for the website in fiscal year 23 and 24?
So in 23, it's $38,000.
Okay.
And in 24, it's $60,000.
Okay. Why is there such an increase there?
So we want to ensure that we have the funds to make sure that we're maintaining the database, maintaining its security. We did learn that there is a maintenance fee that I think most agencies in the district probably pay based on our footprint. That'll be an annual cost. Basically, this maintenance fee is based on the number of users in your particular system, how much storage you're using in terms of your data. We don't have a sense at this point how much we will be required to pay in terms of that maintenance fee. We're a very small agency. We're only going to have a handful of people basically working in our area. So, but we still don't really know how that's calculated or what that's going to look like for us. So, so in terms of future costs, we're just anticipating additional needs for the system.
Okay. And how do you all handle confidential information and data? Do you all use systems that are the same or similar to those other jurisdictions? I think you spoke about Virginia to process complaints or to manage confidential materials. Do you find that the system is similar to the other jurisdictions?
It is. It's very similar. The only additional pieces are those other functions that I'd like to see added. Okay.
And what is your sort of agreement with Octo right now? I guess I'm assuming you all have been working with Octo.
We have. So Octo presented us with a proposal in January, and in the proposal it includes lots of information, but it also includes the deliverables that they agreed to provide us. And so we're kind of working through that to make sure all the deliverables have been completed for that proposal. And then after this Virginia demonstration, we've kind of talked to them about additional functions we'd like to see added, and they've been very open to thinking through how to move forward with those additional functions.
Okay. Let me ask you this: does the money that you all have budgeted for 2024, does that include the annual maintenance fee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think you've discussed staffing in depth there, but wanted to see so the plan is to fill your 2 data analyst positions. What's the timeline for that?
May 2023 for the analyst. Yeah.
Okay. And what are you looking at salaries for these positions?
$80,000 annually.
Okay. And what's the impact? What would be the impact of not filling those positions?
So currently the investigative pieces are falling. We're kind of all hands on deck when it comes to the community reaching out to us and then our response to the community. And so, we're doing the initial assessments, as complaints come in, and we kind of assess to see what the next steps need to be. And then the back end investigation pieces we're handling. And when I say we, it's myself, and we have a deputy CFSA Ombudsperson as well. So we're handling that work. In order to expand into some of the other areas that we are charged with, for instance, this, the critical analysis of the child welfare system and coming forward with identifying those trends in the system that can be improved upon, we're doing that work as well. So there's lots of work that's occurring, but having those additional individuals in place will allow us to be more, I think, efficient. We'll have some additional ideas and perspectives at the table in terms of just making sure that we are documenting and understanding the case thoroughly. So I just see those two positions being critical because they can do a lot of the work that we're currently doing, and then we can move into some other areas.
Okay. And then as it relates to, so most of that work that they will be doing will be like the investigative pieces.
That's correct.
Okay. Wanted to ask, thus far, how many complaints have you all received?
So since the launch of the website, which was February 6th, we have received 12 complaints. We're working on 4 investigations right now. Not every contact with the office is an actual complaint. So, sometimes people reach out. There was one particular person who reached out and they initially wanted to file a complaint, but then there were some changes made to their case and they withdrew their complaint. So, that we didn't move forward with an investigation on that one because they were satisfied with the changes that were made for their case. There are others that have reached out really just to tell us about what happened to them and their family. And so it wasn't an investigation, and they were clear that there's nothing to be investigated. They're in a good place now, but there was a time where things were difficult and they wanted us to know about what happened so that we had a better sense of what the system is like. Yeah.
So you guys could evaluate, take a look at the system as overall and making sort of recommendations how people should move forward based on their experiences.
That's correct.
How long does it take to, right now, approximately how long does it take to conduct an investigation?
So we are giving ourselves 45 days. We've come up with that number based on a review of what other states are doing that have ombuds offices.
Okay.
So of course, that's a guideline because we're just really getting off the ground with investigations. But that's our current policy, is 45 days. Okay.
And what are your anticipated costs per investigation?
So in terms of cost, it's really the time involved in completing the investigation. Right. So, when we get an investigation, we do a thorough review of the case in the CFSA's system record. We oftentimes will talk to the caseworker, to their supervisor to follow up and get more information. There are collateral individuals that we may also need to interview. It could be a teacher, it could be a therapist, if that is appropriate for this particular case. And then we document everything over time. So it's really the cost of time.
Yeah, okay. And right now you have your staff to do it, but the 2 analysts you bring on will also be a part of sort of.
That's correct.
The network. Okay, got it. Do you all have thus far, does the agency have any memorandums of understanding or agreements with any other agencies?
So we have a memorandum actually with the council in regards to procurement, but we are moving forward with accessing the PASS system, which will allow us to procure for ourselves. And so we're moving forward pretty well on that. We're making good progress on that. We also have a memorandum in regards to the sharing of information with the agency, with CFSA. Okay. We have a pending memorandum with Octo, which would be in regards to the development of the website, the database, and the online form. Okay.
Do you all anticipate having an MOU with OSEC or even DYRS?
Definitely with DYRS because of the crossover youth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we actually had a conversation with them probably a couple of weeks ago, trying to, just iron out how they can share their data so that we can start receiving reports. So yes, I would anticipate that that MOU definitely.
Okay. I wonder if Aussie would be good too, but I don't know. You can have a conversation with Aussie and see, just because of the crossover with like education and students. I mean, you could do it, you can get information individually from the LEAs, but Aussie should have all the information you would need from the LEAs in that crossover. So it might be good to just schedule a conversation with Aussie just to see if that's somebody you're going to need information and data from. I imagine you might.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
What is your understanding? What is your current budget, and do you anticipate any spending pressures for the remainder of fiscal year 23?
So our current budget for 2023 fiscal year is $935,000. We have, I would say that we have a lot of savings considering the transition in positions and unfilled positions, especially. There's some areas that we may also, see a savings in. So I don't feel any funding pressures currently. I feel like we have what we need to finish out 2020.
Okay. And wanted to ask, as you all sort of transition into, I guess into your new space, which you've now been for a couple of days, wanted to just ask you sort of, can people come in if you're in the midst of investigations right now? Do you have space for people to come in and do in-person interviews and be able to fully do that in the new space that you're in?
We do. We have actually within that space, there are a couple of conference rooms where we could have closed door discussions with individuals who wanted to meet with us one-on-one.
Okay.
There's also office space as well. So we could do a closed door office, but we also have to close the conference rooms where we could close the door and have one-on-one discussions.
Okay. And then the term is outreach, because a big part of your work is, communicating with families and advocates, et cetera. Does your budget support additional outreach to the community? And do you have any plans for events to further, introduce the community to the ombudsman, your office, but also to the work that you do? What does the budget look like as far as making sure you have like adequate outreach and communications to the public?
So we have identified a couple of areas to support our outreach efforts. So one area that we've focused on is ensuring that we have adequate meeting space in the event that we wanted to do, maybe a town hall or something to that effect, where we would need a larger space than maybe an office conference room. Not knowing exactly how much, if that would be something that we could access for free, or if there would be a cost associated with it. We did decide to just err on the side of caution and try to budget some funds for paying for space if that was required. We also have budgeted costs for any kind of materials, printing, brochures, so that we could begin handing out information about the office. And then we also wanted to ensure that we had some funding to kind of help families who want to attend a meeting, but perhaps there was maybe a financial reason that was preventing them. And so if there was some incentive, we budgeted that as well into our budget. We want to have as many voices at the table when we come together with people. We do have, we've been talking about and want to move forward with a community round table. And so we've already started having discussions about what that would look like. We want to have an open house at some point in the future. I have started talking to individual agencies. So I'm kind of getting on their calendars and having discussions about who we are as an office, and learning about the services they provide as well, because I think that's the other side of it too. So I actually have a significant list of agencies that I want to, have contact with at some point in the near future, because I think that's going to help us as we move forward with these, like a town hall approach or other approaches. We can engage as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to be so key and important. I know you all have already begun the work engaging with stakeholders. Maybe, I don't know if you can make flyers or something for like schools. We get commentary back from our educators, from our, teachers, principals. They may want to engage with you, and any families alike. So engagement is going to be a huge part of getting those people in. So it sounds like you all are already in the works and making those plans, and please let us know, because we're happy to promote anything you all are putting on, so that the community knows about it and make sure everybody is aware and can get the word out there. I want to ask you, are there any final concerns, thoughts, or recommendations? Did you watch the hearing yesterday? I think public witnesses had some recommendations on how to make things better for CFSA involved youth. So I know that people are eager to hear your recommendations.
Yeah. So I did listen to the hearing yesterday, and I think what stood out the most for me is those additional supports for caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that that's coming from a child welfare background. Before I came to the district, I worked in child welfare, and I also worked in human services. So I was involved in SNAP, TANF, child enforcement, like all of those different programs.
That's right.
And so, for many families, they come forward and they offer up their homes to care for children. Sometimes they're related, sometimes they're not. Yeah. And there just doesn't seem to be that pot of resources to help them really, be a great support for this child in their home, because they don't have everything that they need. And so that stands out for me as an area that we really need to focus in on, is how do we ensure that supports are available for these families as they care for the children that are in their homes. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I know that you are working hard to get things set up, so I will continue to have conversations with you, and thank you for the work you've already done with my staff. And hopefully we'll be able to hold a roundtable to discuss some of your work later on in the year. So thank you, Acting Ombudsperson and staff, and I look forward to working with your team. We will now hear from the Government Witness for Child and Family Services Agency Director, Robert Matthews.
Thank you.
Good morning, Director Matthews and team.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Before we begin testimony, I'm going to administer an oath to you. Everyone who is there that will be presiding testimony, if you also can take the oath, that would be great. If you all could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give the Committee on Facilities and Family Services is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, we do.
Great. Director Matthews, you may begin your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson Lewis George, members of the committee and committee staff. I'm Robert L. Matthews, Director of Child and Family Services Agency, better known as CFSA, and I'm honored to testify before you today on our budget plans for fiscal year 2024. Joining me this morning is our Chief of Staff, Tanya Trice, and Agency Fiscal Officer, Jessica Cochran. I would like to begin my testimony with gratitude for Mayor Bowles' leadership over the past year and our commitment to the children and families of the District of Columbia. This year's budget is focusing on getting back to basics by improving core CFSA programs and enhancing services to children and families. That strategic determination, along with the support of this council and committee, undergirds this year's budget and ensures that CFSA can continue carrying out its mission to protect child victims, support children at risk, assist their families, and advance its vision of keeping DC families together. A few weeks ago, Mayor Bowser presented the FY 2024 budget and the financial plan, the district's 28th consecutive balanced budget. In the Fair Shot budget, the mayor will continue making major investments to support the city's most vulnerable communities, including the children and families directly served by CFSA, as well as those who benefit from our prevention and early intervention work. The mayor's proposed budget for CFSA, which I will present today, demonstrates her continued commitment to ensuring the agency is resourced to provide preventative, supportive, and community-based services that help families keep their children out of foster care, guarantees that the appropriate placements are available for children when they are not safe at home, and creates forever homes and positive lifelong connections for children who cannot be reunited with their birth families. This support is critical as CFSA transitions from a child welfare agency to leading the child and family well-being system that our community deserves. My testimony today will provide an overview of what CFSA's 2024 budget supports, where the agency has made important investments and where we have made strategic reductions. CFSA's FY 2024 budget continues to reflect the district's long-standing commitment to child welfare prevention and early intervention, quality services for children in foster care, and support for program performance improvements. We will also continue our focus on diversifying our placement array, strengthening supports for staff recruitment and retention, sustaining our Kinship Navigator program website and mobile application, and keeping DC families together. These investments are more critical now as the most vulnerable children and families of our city recover from COVID-19's impact on the health, education, and economic stability. The overall FY 2024 budget request for CFSA is $219.39 million, with a net decrease of about $1.4 million under our FY 2023 approved budget, includes $166.1 million in local and special purpose funds, $52.23 million in federal funds. In FY 2024, proposed budget includes a reduction of $745,373 to account for the removal of one-time funding appropriated in FY 2023, which consisted of $450,000 to support the district's Safe Shores Initiative, $295,373 to support Child Protective Services Educational Neglect Unit in locating children disconnected from school and reconnecting them to a formal education setting. Additionally, our proposed budget continues to include the adjusted capital and staffing support for the replacement of our federally approved Comprehensive Child Welfare Information System, CWIS, which we have enthusiastically titled STAND, which stands for Standing Together Against Abuse and Neglect in DC. We are in the process of deploying the system on an incremental basis. The system's first release went live in February and future releases are being planned. We hope by the end of FY 2024, most of the project should be completed. We are continuing to diversify our placement array and are finding better ways to ensure that we can provide appropriate placement settings to address even the most unique needs of our children and youth. It is not just about the number of beds, but also ensuring the right supports and resources accompany the placement to ensure placement stability. CFSA has seen a significant decrease in our foster care population compared to pre-pandemic levels. In 2020, our census was 692, and as of February, there were 521 youth in care. Throughout FY 2023, CFSA made sound investments in our placement array, including the Bridge program, which is projected to cost about $900,000, and establishing a therapeutic group home, which is projected cost of $532,111. The Bridge program is a nurturing group home environment that will provide immediate short-term placement support, 24-hour board and care, social service supports with holistic health and education assessments to help inform long-term placement options. The Bridge program will be available for up to 6 male and females between the ages of 12 to 17. A potential vendor has been vetted and is going through the licensing process, which once completed, a contract will be executed. The anticipated opening date is July 31st of this year. On March the 6th, a contract was awarded to a well-respected provider in the district for our therapeutic group home, which will house 6 beds. It's currently going through the facility licensing process. Hiring, onboarding, and training is expected to be completed for youth to be placed by the end of July of this year. Last year, we significantly reduced the number of children and youth who stayed overnight at CFSA headquarters, and we continue to do a better job reducing the need for emergency placement beyond 30 days. We have also made progress in reducing placement disruptions. While the placement crisis that existed in 2019 has been abated, we will continue to assess and diversify our placement array. In terms of educational investments, CFSA will continue to collaborate with partners in the community in locating children disconnected from school and connecting them to resources and support. We have converted 4 NTEs to full-time FTEs to support addressing educational gaps on the front end. CFSA has partnered with OFC with the High Impact Tutoring Program, which stands for HIT, as well as other community-based supports to provide tutoring services for children in foster care. OFC is leading a $39 million investment in scaling and supporting HIT across the district, with a particular focus on at-risk students and other students who experience disrupted instruction. This investment is a core part of the city's recovery strategy, given the strong body of evidence demonstrating the effectiveness of HIT as an intervention that can produce dramatic gains in student learning. As a means to support schools, CFSA holds weekly office hours with LEAs to cross-collaborate on educational issues as they arise. LEAs have the opportunity to ask questions about educational neglect reporting and investigation processes. They can also vocalize concerns about attendance issues with students within their school community and get recommendations for next steps. In regards to recruitment and retention of staff, CFSA will be expanding its recruitment efforts in ways that we can improve the retention of our staff. CFSA engaged with the Board of Social Work to consider a proposal to allow CFSA to recruit licensed bachelor-level social workers. The board and our agency understand the current strain on health and human services agencies due to not having enough licensed master-level social workers in the pool to relieve the current workforce. The board will be reviewing our proposal, and we are optimistic it will be accepted. It is our hope that if our proposal is approved, it will open a pool of social workers that CFSA previously would not have been able to hire. We are continuing to engage our local colleges and universities to develop a strong candidate pool and utilizing external job boards to expand and strengthen our recruitment efforts, increasing visibility and talent opportunities. It is our hope that our increase in social workers will lead to a decrease of burnout among our staff and improvement in our social work workforce retention. In regards to our Kinship Navigator program, These kinship caregivers help keep families together with the right supports and help provide children a more stable and safer home. The Kinship Navigator program is designed to provide those supports to children and their relative caregivers in the district. A component of the Kinship Navigator program is having access to information and support. On December of 2022, CFSA launched the Kinship Navigator website, allowing participants to access to supports and services and the ability to apply online to the grandparent caregivers and close relative caregiver subsidy programs. We thank Mayor Bowser for her commitment to permanent funding, so residents will be able to continue to access assistance for concrete needs such as utility assistance, back rent, food, clothing, and other tangible needs. As of March the 25th of this year, the website has had about 1,200 unique visitors and 4,000 page views. 50% of those visitors are utilizing their desktops to navigate the site via their browser. 48% are using their mobile devices and 2% are using their tablets. The user acquisitions are about 66.3%, which have direct access to the website through URL. 16.9% are referrals from the CFSA website and 16.8% are through search engines. The mobile application for the Kinship Navigator was recently released in March of this year. This app allows applicants access to information regarding supports and services and apply for the subsidy programs and emergency financial assistance. In order to successfully implement all of these transformations from a child welfare agency to a child and family wellbeing system, we need enhanced coordination among DC government agencies who serve these families. The following agencies have signed on and agreed to work with CFSA through this collaboration: DCPS, DHS, OUC, DYRS, DBH, DOH, DCHA, DDS, and DACL, DACA. CFSA has already seen how this worked through its close relationships with the Office of Attorney General's OAG Family Services Division, which is FSD. FSD attorneys have had co-located with CFSA for over 20 years, providing legal advice and counsel in court-involved matters involving child abuse and neglect. In its budget submission, FSD has requested an additional manager to support work involving CFSA in-home population. We support this request as it will build on the partnership already in place and strengthen the efforts to ensure all resources are being accessed to keep children and families safe. Through this collaborative approach, children and families will be linked to resources in their communities with the goal of preventing them from coming to the attention of CFSA unless there is abuse or neglect present. Integral to our transformation from a child welfare system to a child and family wellbeing system is the creation of a citywide warm line and community response model, which will voluntarily connect children, families, and individual community members to DC government systems of care, community-based services before they come to the attention of CPS and the hotline. The creation of a citywide warm line and community response model fundamentally transforms how we approach child protection and community prevention by getting ahead of the challenges that individuals and families experience instead of reacting to mitigating or penalizing crises. CFSA has also developed a model where families with lived expertise can engage with our work to keeping DC families together. The Lived Expertise Advisory Council is involved in helping to design, create, inform, and implement programs, services, and supports beneficial for our DC residents. Our intentionality of engaging people with lived experiences through our Thriving Family Safe for Children initiative is because CFSA understands the value that these individuals and their stories bring to the table as trusted advisors to inform us on how to better support children and families in the district. Our vision for this initiative is that we aspire to create a caring, diverse community comprised of residents, non-for-profit organizations, and government agencies with the unique roles and strengths working together in seamless coordination to ensure that all individuals, children, and families thrive in the district. This is our vision statement. We would like district agencies to take a unified approach to well-being. With this approach, families are trusted and their voice is central to decision-making and problem solving. I would also like to take this opportunity to report that CFSA is the recipient of this year's 2023 Children's Bureau Champion Award. And they chose CFSA out of the 50 states because of how we provide community-based neighborhood-driven supports to families in the most vulnerable neighborhoods of Washington, D.C., and it shows that CFSA continues to be a premier agency leading the pack across the nation. In conclusion and in closing, the FY 2024 proposed budget makes certain that CFSA can continue to support performance improvements, meet our mission, and provide critical services to children and families. Sufficient funding provides us the unique opportunity to rethink what is possible for child welfare. And with these investments, CFSA is poised to help improve the lives of those in our community. Mayor Bowser and the DC Council are critical allies in our efforts to support the district's most vulnerable children and to give them and their families a fair shot at recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic as strong as the rest of our great city. I speak on behalf of every CFSA employee when I say I'm grateful for your partnership. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm prepared to answer your questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Director Matthews, for your very detailed testimony, but also congratulations on your national award and recognition.
Thank you. Thank you.
When's the celebration?
Well, actually, it's funny. Today is one of the celebrations.
Oh, wonderful.
Hearing. So,
all right, let me get in and out of here. Okay, so you can get to celebrating. Okay. Okay. Let me just start with some positions, vacancies, and discussing sort of any areas there. Can you discuss the division with the most vacancies and plans to fill the vacant positions? Sort of if you have the budget to be able to attract individuals to those positions, so that we can urgently fill them.
Sure. So our Child Protective Services Administration pretty much is the administration within CFSA that has the most vacancies. I think we probably have about 45 vacancies of social workers. And so that really equates to about a division, to be transparent about it. And what I have done, which I'll outline maybe three things. We have what we call family support workers. What I have within the last month or so is approved to hire more family support workers to be placed in each Child Protective Services unit. Now, why that's going to be helpful is because there are aspects of the work that they can take on from the investigator, which could alleviate some of those investigative tasks and assignments that they do. The second part, as I mentioned in my testimony, is that we continue to engage with local and national colleges and universities. As a matter of fact, this week or last week, we attended the University of Maryland. And from there, we had at least 12 graduating MSWs that are very interested to come and work at CFSA. So doing those type of events have been yielding more. And the other part is that we have actually been seeing former CFSA employees coming back to the agency, which is also a great thing. The last thing I would say is that, as I mentioned in my testimony, we have submitted a proposal to the Social Work Board. And why that's important is because we are now living in a different environment. And what that means is that we have seen a mass exodus of social workers, not just leaving CFSA, but leaving the field of social work. And so as we recognize the new normal, both our agency and the board recognizes the new environment. And we believe that if we could get the approval and acceptance of the board to where we could hire BSWs, it would open up a whole different pool that we normally wouldn't have access to. And so they're actually taking up our proposal on April the 24th.
Right.
And we should hear something back by April the 27th.
Wonderful.
Again, we've been working with them on language. We've been working with them on ensuring that if we're able to hire BSWs, that the caseloads would not necessarily be the size of an MSW, and how MSWs would also be used as a help to them in doing the work. So we're hopeful in that area.
Great. I appreciate all your work on that and your very detailed answer there. I think that's you're doing all the things that needs to be done and forging ahead. Do we have any sort of signing bonuses for social workers, guarantee student loan forgiveness for social workers? What else can we add to that? I don't know.
Student loan would be great. But let me say this, the mayor has made a $2.5 million investment. That those dollars, from my understanding, will be housed at the Department of Human Resources. And agencies like CFSA would be able to apply for those dollars to help with their recruitment and retention efforts. So we do plan to submit a proposal. And part of that could be sign-on bonuses, and doing so, them providing maybe 2 or 3 years of service or student loans. So we definitely have some of those ideas.
Yeah.
And propose that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like, let's start whatever. I mean, you're doing all the right things. And I think the work that you're doing with the social work board, and hearing about University of Maryland is great. I think we can get we go to those schools and we say, look, if you work for us for 3-5 years, your student loans will be forgiven.
Right.
I think we'll have everybody ready to sign up. I know I would. I'd be like, let's go.
Right.
And so whatever, I know you'll apply for some of that. And I'm glad that that's made available to you all in that recruitment effort. I want to ask about the contract positions. Last year, you all testified about some of the contract positions being possibly moved to OCP, or the agency working with OCP. Can you provide an update on this and the increase in the contract and procurement budget line, which is 1020? What I'm seeing is a jump from 6 to 18. Can you explain that?
Sure. The best way to explain it is, once we exited the LaShawn lawsuit, within the law, it talked about the agency losing contracting and procurement authority. And so
Okay.
from there, those positions that were impacted through that transition were then placed in OCP's budget for 23. Basically, because of the negotiation, and now we have independent contracting procurement authority, those positions and the budget is placed back in CFSA's budget for FY24.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. And now because now you all have your own independent authority to do that, to do your contracting.
Correct.
Correct. And so those people can
Yes.
coming back. Okay. And was it, but it seems like you have a lot of positions for contracting and procurement. And y'all know, I think y'all might be up there with DGS, who does the most contract and procurement as an agency. So why 12 positions?
So there are a couple of things. One, when we looked at the 12, those 12 were impacted because we also have grants, and grants do not fall under the purview of OCP. So we did have some positions to where they oversee many grants that we get from the federal government. So when you put the FTEs together, it looks at both grants and contracts as a total. Okay,
got it. All right. Okay, can you discuss the increase of 2 FTEs in kinship support? I'm looking at line 2067. That looks like a 28 to 30, so a 2-person jump. What are you going to do with these FTEs? What do you imagine that those roles to be?
Sure. So what we recognize is that because of the investments in the Kinship Navigator website and mobile applications, which is great, it has also increased some worker roles. For instance, when someone applies for either subsidy program or emergency assistance, they can immediately be assigned to a worker. But we also have on the website where they have annual recertification of those programs. So it's just created to where we want to ensure that we, one, can complete and respond in a timely fashion to the increased traffic on the website, and ensure we provide the customer service that we've heard for years, sometimes that it can be a delay. So these positions will allow some relative ease for the other workers that are currently in the unit.
Okay, so it's an additional support for that unit to be able to process and
applications, yes.
Applications more. Okay. I want to go to, yesterday we heard why there's a $4.3 million reduction in child placement, which is line 2066. I know you heard the testimony yesterday. I was a little concerned. We heard testimony from a few witnesses yesterday about this 4.3 million cut. And these are people, who do great work, like NCCF was concerned about the cuts, and Children's Law Center also testified about this particular cut. Explain to me why we're doing this reduction in 4.3 million in child placement.
Sure. I think, and this is, I'm always going to be transparent and explain it the best way I can. I think in the work that we do in child welfare, I think we also have to also consider that it's also a business. And so when you think of it as a business, when I look at, and I spoke in my testimony where we had 627 kids in care, as of February of this year, there were 521. So in terms of being good fiscal stewards over local and federal dollars, it would not have made sense for me as an executive to say, we need more money when we don't have more kids. The question I have to ask is, how do you right size to ensure, one, we have the financial resources for the kids in care? Do we have the right supports? And again, it's not even about the number of beds, but let me give you an example. So out of the number of kids we spoke to, like 521 in care, in terms of our bed capacity, we have about 277 homes. Of those homes is about 542 beds. We utilize 391 of those beds, which leaves us with a capacity of 151. What that tells you is that we have capacity for a potential, even if we bring in more kids. That doesn't even include the kids that we have placed in kinship homes. That does not even include the kids that are in residential treatment, which are outside of the district. That does include the 7 that may be in a correctional facility, or those that are in hospitals, or those that are away at college. So when you look at the totality of our placement array, I can say with certainty, we have sufficient beds, we have the supports, and so it's really right sizing based on that. And then I talked in my testimony about the investments we are making, the bridge program and the therapeutic group home. So we're still adding to. So I do understand in this field when there's a concern of, oh, $4.3 million, that's a huge reduction. But as I heard in the testimony, these placement settings are also expensive. And so the question is, do I think we have the right amount of dollars to address the needs of our kids? That answer is yes.
Yeah, because I'm worried about, I hear you on placement. I'm just worried about, like, are we also cutting the services or reducing services?
No, so I mean, and this is how we do it.
And I don't think we are. So I think that was the question. It was like, if we're not reducing services and we're not cutting services, we're expecting the same amount, we're expecting the same value and amount of service with less money.
Absolutely.
Okay. And do we, and as far as a risk assessment goes, do we think like that? Do we, based on experience, do we believe like that's possible, that we can get, that we will get the same level of service and quality of service with the less amount?
So we go through a very rigorous process every year. Actually, last year, or this year, I believe, we did an entire needs assessment on our placement array and our placement services. We utilize that information to actually inform the supports that we need, but also inform how we need to procure a budget for placements. So this is a very methodical process we go through. I know maybe from the outside, it looks as though 4.3 million is a huge reduction, but
yeah,
I'm just gonna say this for everyone. I wouldn't be here if I thought we do not have the resources to do it. We will have the supports that we need. And guess what? If we get to a point where we don't, I'll be the first to raise my hand. But I do believe we have what we need.
Okay. What is, I guess, is the same, what process do you all go through? I don't know. I think it would be helpful for the community to know, so that they know that we're not gonna see a reduction in value and in services based on this cut, and can feel confident about that.
Sure. So let's take kinship, for instance.
Yeah.
When we license a home specifically for kin, they are licensed specifically for those youth. And we know historically when kids are placed in kinship placements, they are far better off in terms of placement stability, they do well in school, et cetera. And so when you have kids placed there, we look at what supports are needed. If you have a kid that's placed in a residential treatment facility, which is outside of the district, they have at that facility the education, the therapeutic supports, they ensure that those youth have that to ensure stability there.
Yeah.
Now, once they hopefully step them down from that program, they may come back to the district. We have a step down program to provide those supports. And I did want to say this because you did mention something interesting. There was a resource parent, I believe, that testified on yesterday around, at least from her experience, I believe, not having supports for resource parents. Well, you know, I'm going to look into that because every resource parent has a resource parent support worker. That worker's role, yes, every resource parent has one. Their role is to ensure whatever supports that resource parent needs, we provide. And then I know that resource parent mentioned respite. We're going to reach out to her because to our understanding, she's not applied for respite before, or she may not know it exists. And again, she may have come from LAYC when they closed. So
That's
it's
right.
really about getting out and
Someone else.
educating.
Right.
By getting out and educating as well. So we want to make sure we reach out to her so she knows that if she needs respite, that's definitely available to resource parents.
Okay. What is your current budget and do you anticipate any spending pressures for the remainder of fiscal year 23? The mayor's supplemental agency proposes cuts to almost every agency, but not CFSA. Should I infer from that the agency has spending pressures? Are you on track to overspend the current year's budget? And looking at next year's budget, why should we think that the mayor's proposed budget is sufficient?
So our total operating budget for 23 is $232 million in all funds. We do not anticipate any spending pressures, and I think we have a very good. There's Justin here; he's the money man. He makes sure that we are very informed in terms of where we are in the forecast of our budget. I'll say this: the mayor has a commitment to this agency, and I don't think it's a secret that we filed a lawsuit. She committed to ensure that we have what we need. And so I have her commitment that if there's something that I need or that CFSA needs, that my job is to, you know, raise my hand, elevate it, and make sure that she's aware. And in terms of 24, we believe that the mayor's proposed budget meets the needs of what we need to do in terms of supporting children and families.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to see if you want to add anything to that. Are you good?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. If you read this budget, you would think that Safe Shores was still funded. But Director, am I correct in that you all zeroed it out? The budget chapter says one thing and then the budget says another. So I'm like looking everywhere right now. And maybe I'm not seeing it. If it is budgeted, where is it? If it's not budget, then why was it zeroed it out? Since I think it's statutory, so we have to have it.
Yes, that is correct. And so I have my budget person here. It is zeroed out. And you know, I'm one that will always be transparent. I also communicated with the executive director to also make her aware that as we go through and have to make decisions, this was one of those that really fell outside of the dollars we had available to fund. I do consider Safe Shores a very important partner to CFSA, but to the community as well, because they do provide services both to Metro Police Department and other agencies. So
That's right.
It is important.
Okay. Well, it's statutory, so I guess basically y'all just leave it on me to figure it out. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Well, at least I'm not crazy, because I was like, wait a minute.
No, you're not crazy.
When I'm reading the language, it sounds like it's there. When I'm looking, I can't find it. Okay. Got it. Understood. And I will figure this thing out. Okay. I always appreciate you just a straight shooter, and I always appreciate it. You're like, yep, figured it out. Okay. So, grandparent and close relative and kinship navigator, I want to go into this for a second. Can you discuss the reduction? Because what I'm seeing in line 4012 is a reduction in the grandparent subsidy activity. It looks like there was a reduction of 413,000 versus an increase in the close relative caregiver program, which is line 413, which is increase of 237K. How did you make that decision? And am I seeing that right?
Yes, you are saying that correct. And let me start with the latter in terms of the close relative caregiver program and the increase there of 237,000. This was, from my perspective, a direct reflection of the change in the law that expanded the the relationship eligibility criteria of the godparents. So we don't necessarily know what that projection would look like, but we feel that with that expanded criteria, it would increase the number of residents that would be eligible. And so therefore, we wanted to make sure we had a budget to support any of that extra. In terms of the grandparent caregivers program, it's very similar to how we do placement. When we look at the number of families or children that receive that subsidy, what we know on an annual basis is how many will go off and exit. We also have a cushion to know how many we can onboard. And this was one where we over projected in 1 year. So we do feel like this $413,000 cut is sufficient, and that we would still be able to onboard the families that we need, knowing the projection and the process that we have.
Okay. And help me, how much money is budgeted to the Kinship Navigator program? Where is that reflected in the budget table?
Sure. So there's $197,500 allocated for the Kinship Navigator program. And if you look in line 2067, you'll see probably 4 different lines where it pays for office supplies, equipment and software related to the website and the mobile application, supports in terms of services and professional supports. When you add all those together, it should total up to the $197,500.
Okay. And so that is okay. So you all, it's an aggregate, but it's totaled up for Kinship Navigator for that amount.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then how is, I guess you broke it down, because I guess I'm trying to figure out how the Kinship Navigator budget is allocated to sort of staff, website, support groups, outreach, and then emergency financial assistance, et cetera. How do you break that down?
Yeah, so one line item, if you look at supports, that really goes to, again, some of the services like support groups, whole family.
Okay, that's that amount. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
then-
Okay, I see how you did it. Okay.
Yeah.
If the caregiver laws were amended, we heard some conversation about this yesterday. If the caregivers laws were amended to remove SSI from the definition of household income and to eliminate the offset of SSI from the subsidy amount, what impact would that have on the caregiver program's budget? Honestly.
Yes, I'm gonna be honest.
I know, I appreciate it always.
Yeah, that honestly, that would be a difficult answer, because we would have to really work with like our fiscal officers to determine what the fiscal impact would be. And I'll say this because I think there are other questions in terms of if we know how many, caregivers are denied because of SSI. Right. We don't track it in that way. It is our hope that our new stand system, once deployed, will. And that's why it's kind of difficult to know what the impact would be. But I do want to say this for the 2, I believe, caregivers that testified during performance oversight. And I want to make clear that it wasn't necessarily their SSI benefits solely. It was the SSI in conjunction with other household income that made them over the 200% federal poverty level. Now, I also listened yesterday in terms of the recommendation for either removing that or increasing the poverty level to 300%. I think there should be more study, because what we don't know is how that also impacts people who are on public assistance. How does that impact in terms of what's needed from the fiscal that I talked about? So I think it's something to explore, but I don't really have a concrete answer as to what the impact would be.
Okay. All right. I was trying to make this happen, Director.
I know.
Okay, well, can you all work with my staff to try to, with my committee?
I'm very
Try to
committed
get
working
these
with your staff.
numbers and look
Yes.
at this more?
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
I appreciate it. Let me ask you this, how many caregivers have applied for a caregiver subsidy in each of the last 3 years who had someone in their household? Well, I guess you said you don't track that yet. Who, let me just
Well,
ask.
I can tell you how many who've applied, but not necessarily why they may have been denied particularly.
Okay, all right. The second part is why they were denied, but how many applied? So I can know what I'm working with.
Okay, so for FY20, there were 64 who applied.
Okay,
For FY21, there were 42.
okay,
And for 22, there were 81.
okay, okay.
And if you like, we can provide this information to your staff.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to get as close to as the information that we need to try to make a decision based on this. And what we can do there. So if we can work together, I would like to figure this out.
Okay.
And see what the possibilities are there. And see what happens. Let's talk about federal cuts. Can you talk about the reduction? It looks like there is a reduction of 14.1 FTEs across multiple divisions from Title IV foster grants. Where is that reflected in this budget?
So what you'll notice, which I'm sure you know, due to the loss of federal dollars, and most of that is due to this federal certainty grant that we lost as well. We had positions that were funded on the federal side that from multiple divisions that we moved now to the local side. So that's where you will see, it's not necessarily a change, but it's not a loss of FTEs, but we just moved those that were funded on the federal to local.
Okay, where in the local side where can I find that?
Okay, so in one position under 2030, there was one for teen services. Also in 1020, there were 2 for contracts and procurement positions. And then in 3087, there were 11 that went to Child Protective Services investigation.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Is that 11 part of the vacancy?
I'll answer that for the director.
Yeah.
We'd have to look at the specific positions. I would suggest that there are several positions of these 11 that would be vacant. But we can get back to you on that for sure and give you the break.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about housing vouchers. Since both of us had to deal with this, I'm sure yesterday and last night and this morning. Okay, so we heard from public witnesses yesterday that CFSA does not use all of its housing choice vouchers available. And I guess I want to ask you, why is that in fact true? And if so, why is CFSA not awarding all of its housing vouchers when so many struggle with housing insecurity? I think people want to know, why the agency struggles to award these vouchers, given that it looks like some 12% of families with CFSA involvement have been housing insecure in recent years.
So I do want to talk about this because I think it really goes to, we have a difference in values. And what I mean by that, I think what we commonly agree is that we don't want youth who exit foster care to exit homeless. Now, what we really hear from are youth who have exited either to a home or to market rent or whatnot. It's several years after that voucher runs out is when you hear back. So I think that's a dynamic we really need to make sure that's understood. I'm very clear on the number of youth that are moving toward emancipation, who may lack or have housing, because our job is to do that. In terms of the distribution of our vouchers, here's where we differ. I do not believe every older youth should have a voucher. So I want to go on record and say that, but I'm also going to tell you why. To me, we would be doing more harm in providing a voucher to an older youth who has not acquired the independent living skills to be able to manage their money, to be able to understand or have a job, and as such, especially in the district, where we all know that it is incredibly expensive to live. We have a very robust process by which a housing, I think it's called a housing review committee, that when it's submitted that there's a housing need, we look at the housing resources we have.
Okay,
What we should understand is that most youth, when they leave our care, actually go live with a relative. They go back and live with their family. There's a very small few that actually need a housing voucher. Those that need a housing voucher or that we approve for one, I want to be very clear, has to have the independent living skills to have one. And so that's where I just draw a very hard line.
okay. What do
and
we
that's just,
do
you
to,
know,
what do you all do in sort of making sure they have the independent living skills sort of prior to exit? So do you, I'm hearing that you all do track, one, let me ask you this, do you track housing needs once a youth has aged out?
Absolutely. Well, not once they age out, because before they age out, we make sure that they do have a housing plan.
Okay, and so that housing plan, you're saying most of them are, the housing plan is living with a relative.
Once they leave, yes, most of them.
Okay. Now, what do you all, does CFSA offer financial classes or information
Yes.
for youth?
We
to
have financial
build?
literacy. We have financial literacy. We have a Making Money Grow program to where they provide some dollars and we match those dollars. We have a lot of independent living classes and sessions outside of that older youth engage in to acquire those skills. And I can give you a list of those who have engaged in them, who do well.
Well, let me ask you this, are they mandatory classes?
No.
Oh, okay.
And let me tell you why, because I know when people think, oh, it's not mandatory. I think you even heard Dr. Chapman from NCCF say, you can't make these older youth.
That's right, that's right.
They have to be engaged to see that it's a benefit to them. Now, do we offer it? Absolutely. We offer it and we will continue to engage. Now, I'm gonna tell you what the real history is. The real history is when they turn 20 is when life begins to hit them and they think, oh, I need to get myself together. But we're talking about a very small number. So that is the reality of what happens. Not to mention, we have Wayne Place. We have a number of other types of housing supports and resources that we look at, but we customize that based on the youth's circumstance.
Okay, so I hear you on what you're thinking as far as like independent living skills. Let me ask you, so if I am a youth and I'm aging out and I take sort of all of the financial classes and information classes that is offered, and then I say, I want to exit out, but I want a voucher. How does that work? Or you guys say there has to be a period where you at least try to be independent of a voucher? And if so, what's that independence? What does that independent period look like?
So really, the independence is more so the team that they have around them. They assess the youth's skills, okay? And so it's not even just about taking a class, but it's also having a period of assessment. Because again, I'll be honest, I've done this work a long time.
Yeah.
And I've seen it work well and I've seen it not work well for some. You just want to make sure that you don't set an older youth up for failure. And I have a lot of conversations with people about this to where it's really after the fact, when you give them a voucher. Let's say we give them all a voucher right now.
Right.
What happens after 2 or 3 years? If they haven't gotten a job, if they don't understand once market rent sets in, utilities, the cost of living, all of that has to be understood before you just give a voucher away. But to that point, I want to make clear, because I was hearing, we do not withhold vouchers. I think I'm trying to make the case as to why we would approve for one, but that's just my heart line. So
I got you. Okay. Well, I know the Pocket Preserving Our Kids' Equity, Trust, and Fostering Stable Housing Opportunities Amendment Act of 2022 was not funded in this budget. And I want to work the agency to ensure that at least the second part of the bill, which mandates that the agency develop in consultation with the aging out youth and youth guardians at Litem, a written housing plan. My colleague and committee member, Councilmember Nadeau, worked on this bill, and I'm sure that she will also assist in making sure that it is implemented. So it looks like, and that's based on need. So it looks like I think the second part of that legislation would be able to sort of address this. Or
Yeah, I think when we look at the legislation in terms of a housing plan, these are things that we do for youth beginning at 15. It's called a youth transition plan, YDP. And it's not looking at housing, it looks at education, looks at financial support, it looks at what other things they look at, Tom?
Financial support, education, independent living skills as a whole. There are 9 domains across the board, and typically these are domains that then they are connected to the Office of Youth Empowerment. They have about 40 staff who focus on these skills. So in addition to the dedicated social worker, they also have access to the Office of Youth Empowerment, who provide the Life Set program, the financial literacy, the Make Money Grow program, all the programs the director just previously talked about. In addition to, if they are interested, again, can't make them aftercare. So aftercare program allows for the young to stay connected up to age 23 to continue to support with housing or their plan if they're interested. Cool thing about aftercare is they can come back up to age 23. So let's say at 21, they want to be done with us, they want nothing to do with us, which is often the case, but they're 22 and now they're in trouble. They can come back, we can continue to support them. So there is a whole host of supports available if they avail themselves to them through the Office of Youth Empowerment.
okay, do they like fully understand or appreciate sort of when, like, the consequences of when they don't engage in services? I get it, it's their choice, and I remember being a young person. I remember, like, it's not the same, but when I was in Upper Bound, once I graduated from high school, I was like, I'm not going back to Upper Bound, even though our last summer, technically, we are supposed to go to Upper Bound that last summer, do transition work, do transition service. But I was a senior and I graduated and I didn't want to listen to my director and go back. So I remember what that was like. It's like, I'm out, I'm graduated, I don't want nothing to do anything else. But do they feel like, is there a way, do they understand, or I guess, how do we make them understand sort of the potential pitfall of not doing any of that sort of aftercare work, follow-up work?
So I think the best way to respond to that is that we have a Life Set program. And this is an evidence-based program that only probably a handful of jurisdictions actually offer it. And it is for those youth who are very difficult to engage. What we have found in our data for those that do engage in that particular program, they actually do well. But it is based upon, as you mentioned, their willingness to participate. In terms of helping them understand, it's really sometimes what we haven't talked about is like credible messengers. Mm-hmm. They sometimes can be just as effective as a social worker to say, been there, done that, I can relate.
That's right. Like the guy who was in Atlanta, who started his own business, who testified in the performance oversight hearing.
Yes.
And he actually took part of all of the programs and services through OIE.
Right.
Start to in the beginning, but he did come around. And I think the beauty of the team at OIE is they don't give up. They're there the first time, second time, 52nd time when the kids are ready. And I think that's the difference.
Okay. So there is that return period, because there is a time where we're like, you know what, I'm out today, and then quickly life hits us. You know what I mean? Like life, that transition to adulting is very staunch and swift. And then some reality settle in. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, and I think you're right, some credible messengers, having some students who who went through the process and can speak to it is probably the best way to go in trying to get them to understand that before they age out. Maybe we can just do something where we do like before they age out, like they have to sit down with someone who's graduated and has been successful, and they get to talk to them through it, instead of maybe like their caseworker or social worker, maybe a former student probably should be the person sitting there with them and explaining that.
And there are like we have a youth council, there are former foster youth on that council. There's so many different ways that we try to engage older youth, because we know there are gonna be some that get it, and there are gonna be some that don't. And we are totally aware of all those different dynamics. And I think what our role is really trying to figure out, is there something more we can do? Because even if you can reach that one that you couldn't reach before, that's one more than you had before. So we
Yeah.
continue, and we're open, to hearing, other recommendations. But we do have, I'll be honest, probably more of this agency than most across the country in that regard.
Okay. Yeah, I think we got to lean in with the expectation that they're not going to, as because of any youth, even youth who have not been in care, are at the end of this, and that's 16 to 20 period, or have not actually realized a few things. And then so we got to be sort of in the expectation that it's going to take time for them to come back and offer that open window to be able to come back. But I want to go to some contracts and programs. Can we go through the funding in the community partnerships program budget lines?
Sure.
In community partnership services, there are 9 FTEs budgeted for this activity area. Are these employees performing grant management and oversight services only, or are they also external facing to families, directly providing agency coordinated family services?
Yeah, so our community partnerships, and I'm sure you know this, is our administration that oversees like our collaborative contracts, our family success centers, all of our
Right.
CDCAP and stuff. And so with this particular area, in terms of FTEs, it's the deputy director for the community partnerships, the administrator, we have the program specialist. And so their role is really to help evaluate the effectiveness of all of the prevention programs, as well as the program manager. I think there are 2 program managers. So that makes up the 9 FTEs that's budgeted in the community partnership area.
Okay. And so that, and I'm looking at line 8010. Okay. What is, let me ask you this, what is considered or included in the in-home program line, which is program activity code division 8020?
So
Because it looks like the reduction, so to confirm, the reduction of 447,000 we see there is not a cut to the home visiting programs.
correct, no, there's not a cut there.
Oh, okay.
But in terms of in-home, 2 things. One, this is where a family comes to our attention, and by way of an investigation, a parent may be substantiated, but the child is not separated from that parent. And then we provide in-home services to that family. And so that's actually where we service more families in-home than we do on the foster care side. And so when you look at, in terms of an 8-person increases, because we see that there are more families being served on the in-home side, and therefore they need more social workers to assign to those cases. And those particular positions are co-located with our collaborative. So we have social work units co-located with our community collaborative.
Okay. And what's the current agency staffing versus vacancy level in this activity?
Okay, we have to get back on the actual numbers of that.
For the in-home, we'll get back to you on that specific question.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to go to prevention services and home visiting. I know we had a lot of testimony yesterday. What specific services or programs are included in the prevention services line? So program activity code. Looks like
830. Okay.
looking at
So when
30. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the prevention line, you're looking at, that's where our collaborative contracts are.
Mm-hmm.
As well as we have the family success centers. There is where the home visiting programs are housed as well. Also, I think we heard even yesterday in terms of some of the fatherhood initiative programs that within 80/30. We have family peer coaches, family functional therapy, PASS, and our MOU with DC Health.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is the area where I'm like, I think it's obvious that the funding is not enough for collaboratives and success centers. Would you agree with me?
So interestingly, yesterday I listened to the testimony.
Mhm.
And I want to say two things. There is a big difference between collaboratives and family success centers. So let me start with the family success centers.
Okay.
One, there was testimony stating that there was a decrease. That is not true, and I want to tell you why. When we initially established the family success centers, they were given around, I think, 400,000. But the reason for that is because they were startup costs. There was costs for equipment, occupancy, hiring of staff, and we went an entire year of planning. And what they knew is that from there, they would be around 325,000. So I heard what the testimony was yesterday, but it wasn't quite as transparent as it needed to be. But their budget in terms of family success centers has been flat. Now, what you did hear, I think Cherie Kraft speak from Smart from the Start, is how they operate. They have a community advisory council comprised of people in that particular neighborhood that inform the family success center on the services they provide. The difference in the collaboratives is that collaboratives have family support workers who case manage families that may have an active open investigation with CFSA. They may have an active open in-home case, or it may be a family we refer to them post involvement with CFSA. Family success centers don't case manage at all. The collaboratives case manage, so they're really seen as a smaller social service agency that provides.
What's the difference in like, help me compare budget wise, what's the budget for collaboratives? What's the budget for success centers? And then also, could you tell me sort of how do the grant amounts for home, like year over year, how do the grant amounts for home visiting programs also compare?
So in regards to, let's start with the collaboratives, which I thought it was interesting too. We haven't asked them to do more for less because we haven't even negotiated the contract yet. So we negotiate collaborative contracts annually because we base their scope of work and target population based on clients served. What we see in our data is that we see more families being served in wards 5, 7, and 8 because most of the children that are separated are from those wards. So naturally, when you go through negotiation, you may see more costs in their contracts because of the populations they serve. And so that's how it's negotiated on the collaborative side. On the family success center side, it's a little different because those contracts or those grants are flat, but it's based on a neighborhood, not based on a ward. The collaboratives are based on ward specific. Family success centers are based on neighborhood specific. So those dollars don't necessarily have to be the amount that the collaboratives have. In terms of home visiting, which I've heard a lot of testimony about, my honest recommendation, I think there needs to be a district. I think there needs to be a district response to this because home visiting in terms of child welfare families probably is a smaller number than how they provide home visiting across the district. So I would prefer there be more of a district response as to when I'm hearing, which I don't necessarily disagree with, increase in terms of salaries. So we just talked about how expensive it is to live in the district. But with that being said, in terms of, I think there's one thing of salaries, but there's another thing of capacity. And from our home visiting providers, there's still capacity of families they can serve. But I think what's been requested is the increase in salary and dollars, which I think should be more of a district way to address and respond to that.
Yeah, I know all of us could connect with sort of their testimony about needing a salary and a better way of living to support their families. And I don't think anybody would disagree, because even those with higher salaries know it's hard to live in a district and survive and have. So I agree, we have to have a district-wide support there. But I want to go back to so collaboratives and success centers, because in my mind, they are prevention. So they are like our front line. And the more we invest there, the less we have to do on the back end, or the better outcomes we have.
Correct.
So I just feel like we need to, and we have to take into account, staff retention, inflation, and all these other factors. I do think we need to see an increase both for collaboratives, even also for success centers, but especially for those who are taking on like families and casework, just to make sure that they're actually doing the work they need to do, reporting out the way they need to report out as well. What room do we have or to increase at least the budget for collaboratives?
I do not see, I'm looking around this room, and I don't see in the current budget climate where there's room to go beyond what's been proposed. What I will say in terms of what you just said, the importance of having the infrastructure to support children and families, I can very much sign on to, especially with the development of the warm line, the community response model. Those things will be needed to ensure we have infrastructure in place.
Okay. Let me ask you, and then you spoke about this a little bit already, but the home visiting programs, how many families, because it is smaller on the CFSA end than it is sort of from DC Health and Department of Aging and Community Living and those partners over there. How many families are currently receiving home visiting services from community partners?
Let's see. So this is the next slide. So I believe, at least for, I think it's community family, is it called community family line? Is that what it's called? Okay, I believe to date, there are 41 families that have been served there. No, is that 41?
Yes.
Or is that CDCAP?
Can we-
Actually, let me get back to you on
Yes.
that. Let me get back to
Okay.
you on that, just to make sure these numbers are accurate.
Okay, and we do just like, I think I want to know sort of how many families.
Well, actually, I can. So for Mary Center,
Uh-huh.
there've been 27 families. And for Community Family Life, there've been 41.
Okay. And I mean, I guess we can quantify how many additional families are likely in need of these services and supports. Well, do you imagine that there are, based on, your experience, are there additional families that are likely in need of these services and supports, and we're just not able to meet that need?
So I can
And
say,
let me say this, is there a goal at CFSA to expand home visiting supports to meet the larger need?
this is what I would say. Because I know home visiting is voluntary, it's really incumbent upon the worker who is referring them for home visiting to explain the benefits. Because even the federal government won't even allow home visiting to be required. If we could require home visiting, I think I would have a totally different answer, because I see the benefits of families that get involved with home visiting. But because it is voluntary, what you may not see is the uptick in utilization that we would like to see, because we do see that the outcomes of families that participate are positive.
Right.
But we always definitely, especially for moms who have a positive toxicology, we always refer those moms for family home visiting.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because it seems like the outcome is good there. I didn't realize it's also like sort of voluntary. So you have to say, I want someone to come in my home and do this.
Absolutely.
And support me. And those people already have, if they make that decision, they already have an extra initiative. I mean, they're already indicating that they want a better life. They want to improve. They want the support. They want it in a different way, where we, have some people who don't want it. They're actively saying they do when they volunteer into it.
Yes, and the other benefit is that you can have a home visitor in the home even without having CFSA. So I think, to me, that's the benefit, to where people may not feel as though, the agency is there to surveil them or to investigate them. So there are really a lot of benefits to families participating in home visiting program.
Yeah. Okay. That'll be a part of the work that I have to do. in addition to Safe Shores. I'm not gonna let y'all go on the Safe Shores thing that y'all let me do. But no, in addition to Safe Shores, it is something that I am actively trying to figure out in this very difficult budget season, which is difficult. But I appreciate that. And at least knowing that, and you recognizing that the outcomes are good when we do have home visitors, and they are participating in that way. If our team was able to find the funding to provide for increased grant amounts for sort of home visiting, I also think we need to be thinking about supporting our home visiting providers with the overhead funds needed to provide recruitment bonuses too there. So that's another area where I'm looking at, helping and supporting in that way. But I appreciate your response there. I see there is a 333,000 increase for families first DC. I'm looking at project activity code 8040. Is this to open a new family first site, or is this to increase grant amounts of the existing 11 sites? And is this increase from local funds or federal?
So from my understanding, this was from local fund, well, this was from APRA, right?
Right, so to be clear, council member, the number of family support centers are 11, and all 11 are funded in FY23 and are funded in FY24. For this fiscal year, there are some federal funds that are being used. They were federal funds that were received by the agency. We have some smaller grants that had some ARPA coronavirus dollars that were added onto it. So we were able to use those one-time funds to fund one family support center. That funding is no longer available, so we're switching it over to local funds.
Okay, so it was federal one-time ARPA funds.
Yeah, to fund
Okay.
the family support centers that is no longer available, so we need to.
And I believe that was to fund the Ward 5. Yeah, the Ward 5 Success Center that was more recently established.
Okay, so it wasn't new is a different term right here, but so it was for, and Ward 5 is one of the existing 11 sites right now.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So that's what it was originally for.
Correct.
Okay. I want to ask you about MBI Health Services. There was testimony during the performance oversight hearing about the quality of MBI services. I don't know if you remember, and this was from like actual CFSA youth who are successful and are doing really well. And I think they were giving honest feedback, and I don't think there was any malintention there. They were just giving honest feedback, which I think is good for us. Have you done an assessment of MBI as your provider, given the testimony from performance oversight hearing? And how are we moving forward if we're moving forward with them?
Sure. So one of the things I wanted to articulate in regards to any particular organization that contracts with CFSA, we have an internal contracts and monitoring division, and they monitor an organization based on the scope of work and the components within their contract. And there are times with any organization that if we see that there are deficiencies, the possibility of having a program improvement plan and them having to meet in certain actions to be made whole. In reference to MBI, with one particular case, our agency did do an investigation, and we provided those findings to your office. And so since then, that matter from our perspective has gone in the positive, also because there's a new team. But to your question, we do monitor MBI as well as our other providers, and if there are issues, there are remedies that we can take to address those.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the youth feedback, and when they give us feedback, I think we listen and we say to the provider, we should have improved outcomes from our youth and their feedback, and if not, then I think we have to explore other options that may better suit and better fit our young people. So I know you all do have a team that does specifically that work. So just flagging that. I'm hopeful that we can do that work around and make a determination of which way we want to go as we spend taxpayers' dollars.
Absolutely.
You mentioned in your testimony the implementation of the Comprehensive Child Welfare Information System, CCWIS. Can you talk more about this? What is the total budget for this project? And do you have enough funding for the implementation?
Sure. The total amount budgeted for our CWIS development is 52.1 million. And that started from FY20 to 23. And in terms of whether or not that's sufficient, I think I would want to go on record to say this, that any type of project of this magnitude that any agency takes, there's always unforeseen circumstances that might prohibit it from being executed on time, which means there are delays, and in delays, that means that there's a possibility of additional funding. I particularly meet with Microsoft Solutions on a weekly basis.
Okay.
I stay abreast on where we are in terms of our releases. We are still meeting, and I do not yet know in terms of if there's a potential, but if there is, I definitely will make that known if that arises.
Okay. I want to ask the ASL contract. What is the agency process of securing ASL interpreters for events or meetings with families who may need ASL? As you know, under my Facilities and Family Services umbrella, I also have the Mayor's Office of Deaf, Blind, Hard Hearing, and I also have the Office of Disability Rights. So I want to ask that in regard to any families you're servicing with ASL needs.
Sure, whether that's families or in terms of meetings, we have actually an internal HR representative that oversees to ensure that those services are provided. So, I mean, the real basic process is if there's a meeting or there's a family, that referral is made to that HR representative, and they coordinate with the team to ensure ASL services are provided.
Okay, so you all are you go through, you're going through also Disability Rights, or you're going through MOTA?
I'm not sure which one we go through, but I can get back to you in terms of which one.
Okay. But you all, I don't know how great the need is, but I imagine there's a need for everyone. So I just wanted to see if sort of what that need looks like for you all.
Yeah, we've usually, in our meetings, to be quite honest, in all of our meetings, we usually have ASL services.
Okay.
We do have staff, we have members of our staff who need those services as well.
Okay. We had testimony on flex funds yesterday. I'm not sure if you heard testimony about flex funds. I want to spend a few minutes talking about this. First, I asked a witness yesterday to walk me through the process, and they didn't know. So I'm hoping that you can walk me through that process. If I'm a CFSA involved and I need flex funds or emergency funds, how do I get access to those funds, and how do I know about them?
Sure, I can walk you through that. First, as you mentioned, that our real customers are our staff, to make sure our staff know that there are emergency flex funds available to families that they case manage. And how they become known is when the staff assess that there's a need. When the staff assess that there's a need, they will complete a form as well as a memo. Now, in that memo, what they will state is what the need is. It may state also other resources that they have also explored, because again, this is an emergency pot, so it's not like a pot that's so large to where it could meet every need. But as an example, you may have a utility bill that's in the rear. Actually, this is a real example of a request of $7,000 to $8,000. And so with that, what you may have is a worker to come and say, well, we found a resource that will make a partial payment on this. Can CFSA make the additional payment? That can be approved. And in terms of the approval process, it's a request from the worker to the supervisor. supervisor to program manager to administrator. There are some administrators that have the ability to approve certain amounts.
Mhm.
And then there are deputy directors who can approve larger amounts. And so that's really the process. But in terms of how it's communicated, because I did hear yesterday, it's not something I would, put out to say we have it. It is specifically
So,
for those
yeah,
families
it's-
involved. Yeah.
Right, so it sounds like it's available to your staff as they make assessments, and then they can sort of apply or
Yeah,
try
they
to
just make a request. Yes.
request, they make a request for it. And how much of that, so how much is available sort of in that, how much do you have in that fund for fiscal year 23 now, and then how much is allocated for fiscal year 24?
So for 23, is the same thing as happening, prosecute for 23?
Mhm.
So for 23, it's 428,000 that's been allocated. And for FY24, I think it's 562,000 that's been allocated.
Okay. And how much is left for fiscal year 23? How much have you already utilized?
So for fiscal year 23, we've spent $283,308.96.
Okay. And you're on track to, you believe that will be spent down by the end of this year,
We anticipate.
this fiscal year? Yeah. Okay. And you said the same amount is for fiscal year 24?
No, there's 562,000 for FY24.
Okay, so increase for
Yes,
an increase, and that's based on what you've examined this year?
that's based on what we believe, especially in terms of like the warm line community response. We project
Okay,
more families that may need more emergency financial support.
okay. And let me ask you this, where in the budget can we find the flex funds? Where do you house that? Like what line?
Council member, can we get back to you on that? We'll lay out exactly what parts of the budget. Would you-
Okay,
that's
no
all right.
problem. Who determines if someone is eligible? So once they send a request, the request goes up the chain to you all, and you will sort of make the determination who's eligible?
Yeah, so usually it's either the administrator or deputy director, because they have the ability to approve certain levels. Very few come to my attention other than similar to if it's like a $7,000 or $8,000 request.
Okay, and is it a one-time request per person or family?
We do have a policy around it being one time, and I'll say there are some extenuating circumstances to where as funds are available, we have been able to assist families more than once.
Okay. So this is sort of case by case and discretionary in that regard.
Yes.
Okay. Warm line and high impact tutoring. I'm really excited about the warm line. I think it's innovative. I think it's necessary. I think this will be such a great part of your legacy as a director in getting this done. And I think it's a clear need that we hear from everyone. What is the budget for warm line?
Okay. I thought you had more, but I was gonna wait for that. So the budget. So here's a couple of things. One, we have a private donor that's kind of doing like the startup cost.
Okay.
In terms of the startup cost, we're looking at for equipment and supplies that may range around $3,500.
Okay.
You have where it's software and system integration. That's going to be around $40,000. And in terms of the staffing and personnel, that will cost around $432,000.
Okay. And right now we are right now so there's a philanthropy portion to it.
Yes,
Okay. And I guess, but eventually we should, as a city, if it's working well and doing good for families, that we should absorb the cost. How long do you see having a private donor, or like what's the plan around like transferring and cost and to us absorbing those costs as a government?
so I think the largest cost is the staffing, and I think the good news is that that's something that we can already take on within our currency vacancies that we have. So we'll take on that cost. Ongoing cost around maintenance of equipment and technology, to me, those are going to be very minimal, to where I believe that we'll be able to absorb that. Probably another section would be around training, because we want to make sure they have all the training necessary. But in terms of the scope of it, the largest cost will be around staffing and time. And there are other pieces that I think we'll be able to absorb over time.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm very, excited for this, and I want to help it. I want to help it succeed, and I want it to meet the need and work well. So I look forward to working together on this project and seeing what that long-term plan looks like and how we get it going.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The budget book, I'm gonna go back to two things I want to go back to, and then I'm done. Want to go back to agency personnel for 1 second. The budget book says that this agency has many more employees than this budget can actually support. The book says the agency will have roughly 847 FTEs, but in reality, the number of staff is roughly 100 employers lower, about 740 FTEs. Some of these positions have been vacant for a very long time, some as long as 7 years, and in total, roughly 100 vacancies. Can you discuss this?
Sure. So particularly in every year, especially in FY24, we have a vacancy rate and factor around 12%, and 12% really equates to about 100 positions. And in order to achieve kind of our vacancy savings, some of those positions have to be vacant or held in the short term, while we still are able to hire, as I mentioned, as an example in Child Protect, because of the vacancy savings and the factor that percentage that we are still able to hire and have the workforce that we need in order to support the children and families that we have.
Okay. And so that's something that you all, I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out how, is this something that I think every agency decides to do as a result of sort of where they are in whatever that percentage looks like?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay, got it. Regarding the CCWIS, if the 14K for the CCWIS system update to incorporate the automatic expungement feature needed for the educator background check streamlining amendment act covered by the 4.5 million in supplemental? And if not, can the federal portion of the funding for the CCWIS upgrade cover the 14K?
I think we need to get back to you on that because of its more recent passage. We have to kind of do a better analysis of what those costs would be.
Okay. Okay. And let me see if I cover everything from testimony yesterday. There was a conversation with CASA for Children of DC, and they said it would be mutually beneficial and for this contract, and it was just paperwork. It was just a contract, and it was federal dollar. It was some dollars that can be had on both sides. Can you sort of address why you all won't do the contract with the CASA for Children of DC?
Sure. I think also sometimes what's reported may not necessarily be all that's what's going on. So let's start here. Our teams have met probably 2 or 3 times. And in terms of CASA's understanding of how they think they could, or we could on their behalf, draw down federal dollars, it's not as simple as one may think. However, when we left the meeting, which I wasn't a part of, but I have met with my team about it, what they were to do is to come back to CFSA with examples and or a plan for other CASAs across the country that may be able to draw down these dollars and what that looks like. And I do know this is the second time that Ms. Adams has testified. What she's failed to mention is that she's not yet come back with a proposal. So if Ms. Adams is listening, she's welcome to bring that proposal to CFSA.
Okay,
We can take it under consideration and see where we go from there.
okay. And then my understanding, which you already addressed upfront, for respite services already exists and there's a support worker already there. And so this is a matter of people knowing about it and needing to engage in those services.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then with the grandparent caregiver reductions, are there any fears of developing a wait list? I think the funding that was put in last year's addressed the program's wait list.
So I also heard testimony also yesterday that there's a wait list, or there's been a wait list. We haven't had a wait list in over 3 or 4 years. So I was a little puzzled by that, but we've not had a wait list over 3 or 4 years. And I think also we need to define what a wait list is. A wait list is not if a person is waiting to be deemed eligible. A wait list is if they've been deemed eligible and we can't onboard them because there's not the budget to do so. So we have the budget in terms of those that we are being eligible to onboard, but we've not had a wait list in over 3 or 4 years for the grandparent caregivers program.
Okay. Okay. I think I covered everything that came up in testimony yesterday at the hearing. Director, let me ask you any final thoughts or statements as it relates to this budget?
No, well, I have a couple. One, I know that the Ombudsperson spoke prior to myself, and that both of our agencies are working collaboratively together. I fully support the work of the Ombuds office in terms of if there are identified gaps in the system and how we look at that systemically. And again, I'm glad that the Ombudsperson spoke to how that extends beyond CFSA and other child and family serving agencies. The last thing I would say is that I appreciate your support. As you just mentioned around our community response and warm line model. I've been doing this work a long time. And what I find here in DC, in some urban districts, is you can have the resources but lack the coordination. And we're just a jurisdiction that has the resources. We have the infrastructure. But, you know, when families have to go through several doors to kind of get a need met, that creates a lot of frustration for families, and that can be just exacerbated. We can do what I think is a very simple thing, centralize those functions to figure out how we can simplify it for families. That's what we really want to do, and provide those supports for families as quick as we can, so that those issues that they may be impacted by don't turn into something to where they have to come to CFSA's attention. So I appreciate you verbally providing your support. And there's more to come from that. We still have work to do, but we look forward to working with you and your staff and this committee in that work moving forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I look forward to it as well. I know we had a number of items that were on the follow-up list. So if you all can just work quickly, we're reaching that point where we have to make decisions funding wise, and so the sooner we can get any follow-up request, the better, because our team is going to be working pretty hard even over the weekend, because we got to get these final committee reports complete and make some decisions. So appreciate your efforts in that. I hope you all enjoy your celebration this evening, the start of that. and look forward to continuing to work with you. And thank you all. And when I say it's all, I mean not only you all, but the entire team that works for CFSA and all the employees that work under you who work every hard on behalf of district residents. So this concludes today's budget oversight hearing for government witnesses. For the public, if you plan on submitting written testimony for the record, please do so by emailing it to facilities@dccouncil.gov by close of business on April 20th. The time is 11:52 a.m. and this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.